Okay, so welcome everybody to this iMoot mini presentation. Next up is Vinny, who is, I think it's fair to say, the driving force behind the whole iMoot program. And so we're certainly all very interested here to hear what he has to say, and I'm sure we're going to learn an awful lot. So over to you, Vinny.
Thanks, Andy. Okay, so my background is education. I was a high school teacher and school administrator for around about 16 years. And so all of my kind of presentations and keynotes that I've done at events, they've all got a real kind of teaching flavor to them. So this isn't going to be me talking too much. I'm really hoping that you'll all be able to get involved. We've got a few different activities through this presentation. So I really hope that you will get quite a lot out of it. So I don't know how many of you have had a look at the starter activity. If you haven't, you should be able to click the hyperlinks directly on the presentation slide on your screens. Or if not, I've popped it into the chat on the side there. So this is really just a quick quiz to get your brains warmed up and get you thinking about what kind of things that we do as educators have a real difference on pupil progress and pupil learning. The answers to that quiz, I've based them all on the outcome of this this visible learning study by John Hattie, and some of the answers are surprising. So I was saying this to Kim just before the start of the presentation. Sometimes what we think has a large effect on student progress has been proven not to. So a quick bit about me. If you want to connect with me at all, you can have a look, find me on LinkedIn. I run the company for Pukunui in Malaysia, and you can contact me through email and Twitter if you wish. So for this presentation, I've taken the ideas from Professor John Hattie's work, Visible Learning, and put them into a Moodle context. Now, I actually did a similar presentation back in 2013 at the iMoot. And since then, John Hattie updated the results of his study to include, basically it's just I'll talk about the methodology in a minute, but it's basically a big meta study looking at lots of other studies and trying to collate all of that data. He first produced it in 2009 and then updated it in 2012. And the last update was last year in 2015. So it seemed quite a nice time for me to kind of revisit that and look at some of the new things that he introduced into the study. Because the ranking has changed slightly over the years, as you'll see later on. From some of the data that I've got. So basically, he took all of the data. The original one was looking at 800 meta-analysis, all relating to student achievement. The updated one brings in now over 1,000 meta-analyses. A cross-section of about 250 million students. So I personally, but the first time I saw this, I thought, you know, wow, because as teachers, and certainly because my background is science, I like to see data, I like to see evidence backed up. Often, as tends to be the case in education, We see new initiatives again and again, new ideas coming through, and not always backed up in data. So I just love the fact that this is something absolutely concrete that we can kind of hang some ideas on to increase pupil progress, and so we'll look a little bit later maybe how we can get some of these how we can get these into our Moodle courses. This is one of Hattie's main statements, and really it's true from lots of educational studies. Learning happens best when the learning intentions are very clear, the success criteria are absolutely obvious, there's peer involvement in the task, we have discussion about the task, and also that there's a significant, I should say, a significant amount of challenge in the task, just so that it kind of puts us into that zone of proximal development where we're really challenging ourselves and trying out new things and new ideas and stepping out of our comfort zones. So here are my learning intentions and my success criteria for this presentation. So by the end of this, I'm hoping that you'll be able to take away some of these strategies which will have and have proven to have a marked positive effect on students' learning. So if you can get maybe 2-3 really good sound ideas that you can then go on and try out in your courses, try out with your students, then I'll be very happy. That'll be very successful. As I said at the start, I'm not going to, I was going to say stand here. I'm not going to sit here being the sage on the stage. I'm going to be more like the guide on the side, just trying to get as a group, all of you listening to this presentation, to discuss, to challenge, to come up with ideas. So I'm hoping for lots of audience participation. So on that first note, can I get you, so on your screens underneath the user list, you should see a little icon of a hand, which just shows me that you're putting your hands up. If you are directly involved in education, can I get you to put your hands up? And by that, I mean, you know, are you teaching high school students, university students, tutoring, directly involved in teaching and learning? If you can't see it, underneath the users block on the left-hand side, there's a little hand. You should be able to put your hand up. Of course it does, Trish. You can be teaching adults. Okay, so 2, 2, 3. Okay, yeah, Don, I thought you was. Great. Okay, just so that I've got an idea of who I'm pitching this to. Okay, so an overview, and that's probably a little bit generous, but I'll probably talk for a few more minutes about the overview of the study. Then we'll have a look at some examples that have a significant marked impact on pupil progress, according to Hattie. Then we'll do a collaboration task. That might take 15 minutes, it might take 25 minutes. And then we'll try and bring it all together at the end for a review. Okay, so the findings of the visible learning study. Basically, nearly all teaching strategies have a positive effect, and we shouldn't really be surprised by that. But the ones that we're really interested in are the ones that have an above average effect. So I've got 3 examples here. And if you looked at that starter activity, you might be surprised by some of the outcomes there. So it was shown that computer-assisted instruction was shown to have a positive impact, but less than average. So that's just really a question for us to begin to think about. You know, what is it that we're not doing right? And you probably got your own ideas about that and what you see in your day-to-day teaching, whether it's small groups, whether it's in schools or universities. He also showed that teacher subject understanding doesn't matter. Now, he came under a little bit of fire for this. But again, really what he's saying is that it actually matters a lot less than we expect. And again, that might be because a lot of teaching still happens in that very traditional style, where the teacher stands at the front, has the font of all knowledge, and the students absorb that. Gareth saying, "I think that's rubbish." That's great, Gareth. You're welcome to your opinion. I'll give you links to the study, and you can look at the results and all of the data if you want to dig deeper into this. And I guess the point is, you know, up to a certain level, obviously you need a solid understanding of the subject that you're teaching. But once you reach a certain point in your understanding, if you're teaching high school kids, having a high-level degree in a subject or being a professor of a subject isn't going to have much more of a marked effect on their understanding. It's much more to do with teaching styles and your ability as a teacher. Third level of third example that to share with you. Surface level or low level thinking homework has a much greater effect than deep level high thinking homework. And maybe the rationale behind that is if you're giving really high level thinking tasks as homework and they get stuck, they usually need a teacher, so they're not able to complete these tasks. And it was quite interesting if you've watched Michael Moore did a short film recently going to look at some of the schools in Finland, and a lot of them have completely scrapped homework for their students. Okay, so the methodology that he used, he basically benchmarked thousands of these studies. So as I said, this is looking at data across 250 million students and over 1,000 meta-studies. So benchmarked it, and these values that I'll be showing you later, a value of 1 is roughly equivalent to a difference of 3 years of pupil progress. A value of 0.4 is roughly equivalent to a year of pupil progress. 0 has no effect on the pupil progress, and if it's less than 0, then these students are actually having a negative effect on the student's achievement. There's very few of the negative ones, and the ones that did come out are ones that are kind of what we would expect to have a negative effect on student achievement. So the ones that we're really, really interested in are these ones that have anything above 0.4. So anything more than the average, things that are producing a high amount of student progress. Okay, so let's look at the bottom end first. What causes little student progress? As I mentioned earlier, the effect of homework is small. So again, less than the average of all these different methodologies. So yes, it still has a positive effect, but maybe there's things that we can be doing better. It also came out from his study that homework longer than an hour has a negative effect on the students' learning. Keeping students back a year actually set their progress back. So they didn't stay still, they actually went backwards. Too much TV at home, not being able to access schooling. That third one's quite an obvious one. And also I haven't put on there, there was 2 other factors that had a massive negative impact on student progress, and that is depression among students and also corporal punishment at home, both of which I think you'll agree is obviously going to have a negative effect on student learning. Things that had very little effect, so students selecting what they are going to learn. Grouping by ability was shown to have not much effect at all. Class size really doesn't matter that much. And actually, if I go back to that class size one, I mean, if you can obviously argue extremes on that if you've got classes of 200 or if you've got classes of 3, but within normal class size ranges, it doesn't really have a great effect on the students' progress. Okay, so what things does have a great impact on the student progress? Now let me zoom in on this because the text is very small on this slide, so apologies for that. If I start from let's start from the top. So in at number 1, teacher expectations. So that's teachers having high expectations of their students, so high but achievable. So that, from his studies, that was shown to have a massive effect on the pupil progress. Collective belief in change by all the as a learning community. Collective teacher efficiency was shown to have a massive effect on student learning. Student expectations as well. So I guess all those 3 things are all interrelated and they're all very similar things. More structural, Piagetian programs, so really designing activities and content that are appropriate for different stages of cognitive development in the students at different age groups. And I guess identifying that so it could be matched with appropriate developmental stages. Conceptual change programs, so these lead themselves more probably to the sciences. The idea about building up these mental models of the world that students have and then incrementally improving them and building on them. I'm just going to quickly have a look at what's going on in the chat on the side there. Trish says, yeah, the TED Talk, kids can teach themselves. Yeah, I think sometimes, yeah, teachers can be quite redundant. As long as you give the students the tools, students want to learn. It's, you know, it's a natural thing that's built into all of us, and more so in the younger students. Students learn despite their teaching. Okay, where do I get to talking about conceptual change programs? Response to intervention, so that's really targeting at-risk students. So identification and early intervention for some students. If they can be caught early, that can have a massive effect on their progress. Teacher credibility has a large effect. Sorry, the T is chopped off the side of my slide there. If a teacher is not perceived as credible, the students just turn off. And I'm sure you've all had similar experiences. And I, as a student, when I was growing up, there were the good teachers and the not good teachers. And, you know, if you turned up to a lesson with one of these teachers that you didn't perceive them as credible, then you would just switch off. And it's that's, I think, as institutions, that's a really tough thing to try and turn around. Micro teaching. So this is a particular teaching style, often used in small group teaching, actually recording what is going on in the small group teaching sessions. But then the important bit is then getting together again and then reviewing that and discussing, having a discussion of the recording. So I guess this is introducing elements of meta-learning, metacognition, thinking about your thinking, and that also leads into the penultimate one there, methods for identifying cognitive skills. There's lots of studies revolving around learning to learn and getting students talking about where applying certain different levels. So for instance, when I used to teach, I'd get my students to identify tasks and attach different levels of Bloom's taxonomy to them. Is this task explaining? Is this task sorting task? And so there's lots of evidence that that helps to improve pupil progress significantly. And lastly, and again, not surprisingly, classroom discussion. Just kind of facilitating all of those and giving the students the opportunities for deep and meaningful discussion about not just about the work, but also about their learning, and again, getting them to reflect on all of their learning. So those were the top 10 that came out of Hattie's studies. And yeah, you're welcome to not believe them or whatever your own views are, but take a look at there's 2 videos that that I posted on the course page that goes along with this, and you can Google the links to the studies. I don't think I put a link to it, but there's he wrote a great book. It was taking all of his visible learning ideas and putting them into concrete classroom activities. I think it's called Visible Learning for Teachers or something like that. I can dig out the name of it later, but that's a really, really excellent resource. Okay, so that's just really to set the scene and introduce these things that have the significant effects on student progress according to all of his meta studies. The full list, so the 2015 edition of, whoops, I'll zoom out on that. The full list of 195, so that's from the 2015 review of visible learning, is available on that link. If anybody, I'm not sure if that link's going to work. It looks like it's broken up into different pieces. Just trying to see if that link's working. Yeah. So if you're interested, you can have a look, and you can see whereabouts everything fits into it on that scale. Okay, so time for an activity for you guys. What I would like you to do, I'm going to lose this slide in a minute and go back to those 10 items. What I'd like you to do is to have a think, first of all, on your own, how we can take some of these things and implement these strategies and these methodologies into our Moodle courses. So I'll probably give you around about 30 seconds on your own, just to kind of think through and digest some of the things that I've put across. And then what I would like you to do in the text chat on the side here. Yeah, I will do in a second, Gareth. In the text chat on the side, you should see a little options tab at the top. If you click on that, you can have a private chat with different members of the audience. So what I would like you to do for the second part of this is just pick somebody at random, hopefully somebody that you don't know, introduce yourself, maybe swap some ideas, talk about these 10 things, talk about how we can implement some of these strategies. And then the third step of this, I'm going to try and bring everybody back together into the main chat room and hopefully start sharing some of these ideas between the group. So about 30 seconds, first of all, on your own, maybe 30 seconds or so, pick somebody, private chat with them, swap some ideas. And then a few minutes after that, we'll bring it all together again. So I shall switch back to the previous slide. Sorry, Gareth, was it this one that you wanted? Let's pop there's a link to that full list there if anybody, and I'm going to pop back to, there's the top 10 influences. So that's the list that we're going to use for the activity. And I'll try and just zoom into that a little bit more. There we go. So have a think on your own, 30 seconds. How can we take some of these strategies, ideas, build them into activities or incorporate them into our Moodle courses somehow? And I'm going to mute my microphone for a moment. Okay, so if you click on the, if that didn't work, then we were all sitting in silence for 30 seconds. What I'll get you to do now is to click on the options tab in the text chat and pick somebody from the audience, say hi, swap some ideas, talk to each other. Don't put any ideas straight away in the main chat. But just kind of swap them in amongst your pair, and I'll give you maybe slightly longer, maybe 40 seconds or so to do that, just to get some conversation going amongst the group. So again, hopefully this will work. Find somebody and pick them and say hi, swap some ideas, go. I'll give you maybe another 20 seconds or so. Hopefully this is working, and people are sending each other private messages to swap some ideas. Okay, so maybe just a few more seconds for people to finish off conversations. Okay, so hopefully you've had a chance to swap some ideas with people, and hopefully you've sent a few messages backwards and forwards in the private chat. So maybe could I get people now to, you should be able to just copy and paste from the chat if that makes it easier. But can I get you just to throw ideas now into the public chat, anything that really jumps out at you, anything that you think is a good idea, how we can get some of these ideas into Moodle courses. So I think teacher expectations, discussion, student expectations, identification, intervention strategies, etc., etc. Okay, so from Gareth, we've got positive feedback and ensuring that the activity wording is positive with high expectations. So how, I guess part of that, Gareth, for those high expectations, the teachers are going to have to gather some baseline data to base those expectations on, so pre-testing and all of that kind of thing, looking at projection data, where they expect the students to get to, and then some value added onto that. So from Kim, students assess themselves and their peers. Excellent. Clear objectives also create challenges for learners. Students work collaborative. Yeah, any collaborative work with students does need quite tight structuring, doesn't it? From Ellen, teacher credibility, teacher bios, that's a good suggestion, very good. Trish, setting goals and gamification, yeah. So the expectations are realistic or not, and is saying that's going back to the idea of the teacher expectations. Yeah, and of course, you know, a good target has got a certain amount of challenge in it, and as experienced teachers, that's where you know how to pitch it. That's what level of challenge to put into it, and it won't be the same for the students. Excellent. So we've got, this is getting people thinking, and this is the really cool stuff that I was hoping to kind of drag out of this. From Andy, we've got conditional activities can be created to create fair challenge. Yeah. Okay, Andy, keep that, and I'm going to get you maybe to expand on that in a minute. Keep these. What's an example of metacognitive strategies? Okay, so getting the students to be thinking about their thinking. So you could have a, this is putting me on my feet, but you could have some kind of quiz set up in Moodle where you have questions talking about, so it could be, you could take some examination questions, but rather than asking the students what the answer is, you could be asking them, well, what kind of thinking skills does this question involve? Is it a sorting task? Does it require explanation? Does it require analysis? So getting them to think about the actual skills needed, the cognitive skills needed for answering the questions, rather than the actual question. Yeah, why not? Yeah, of course. Like if I've seen some great sessions, people teaching adults, starting off with simple card sorting activities, which on Bloom's taxonomy is, you know, it's right down at the bottom. It's really low level thinking, and then taking that and then building on it, and once you're getting your audience to start to think about their thinking, you know, then that's when you, especially with students, that's when you really start to see improvement happening. Okay, don't stop the ideas coming. I'm going to give you the next task. Is it like when I ask my attendees to look at the logic of the navigation in Moodle to help them? I'm not sure, Ellen. I'm not really sure what you mean by that. Okay. Grab me afterwards if you want to ask me one. Okay, so that was the full list. We've looked at that. Okay, let's try and bring this all together now, and try to put it into a document that you guys can take a copy of, or you can leave the copy of it shared and improve it and work on it. So this link should take you through to a collaborative Google Drive presentation, which is the same one that is embedded on the front page of the course that goes along with this. I shall just pop, here's it's a little bit messy, but that's the direct link to the presentation. If for any reason you're not able to click on the one on my presentation. And you'll see, excellent, I can see lots of anonymous giraffes popping in and dinosaurs and things. So what I've done, I've created 10 slides. Each one of these has one of those concepts from my list, from Hattie's list, top 10 list. What I would like you to do is now try and put a little bit of meat on the bones, take some of those ideas that we've been discussing, pop it onto these slides, and I'll give you a few minutes to do that. And hopefully this will really start some interesting discussion, just to round everything off in 5 minutes or so. So I'll give you probably 5, maybe slightly longer minutes. You can cut and paste from the chat, put some of those comments here, pick a slide, you should be able to edit a couple of slides. You could scroll down and find something that nobody else is working on, and just pop some ideas. The very last one there, classroom discussion, certainly lots of opportunity in Moodle to get students discussing. So what activities could you do? What tasks could you do? I'll stop talking for a bit and give you some time to add to that. This is absolutely excellent. I'm so pleased how this is working out, especially because I'm sure, as I have, lots of you have had a very long day, whether you're just got in from work or it's great to see everybody contributing here and putting all these great ideas down on the collaborative document. Yeah, super. And while people are, and this is for you, so I'm not going to take this down, as it's a Google presentation. Any of you can click on file and take a copy of this, or or after the session, you can revisit it and add other ideas to share with the group as you think of them. It will just be a nice working document that will hopefully continue to evolve. So I'm just going to best way to do this. Let's have a quick. Okay, I've got maybe a good 5 minutes left if I'm lucky. Let's see if I can do quick screen share. So apologies if this, when I start screen sharing, it kind of flips back to the big blue button room and takes over all your screens. So I'm just firing up the screen sharing now. It takes a few seconds. Okay, so it looks like I should be sharing my screen now. I can see the view that you see. So can I get you to, where's my Google Doc? There it is. Can I get you just to switch back to the, whoops, all over the place here. Too many windows going on. Let me switch to that one. Is that shared? No, it's not. Or was it? I've got two different, there we go. That should be shared. Okay. So hopefully you're all looking at my version of the Google Doc, the one I'm screen sharing. So let me just, I'm not going to read all of these out. So I'll let you guys have a look through these slides. So I'll pick a few. What have we got? Collective teacher. So collective belief in change. So maybe, I mean, that's an institutional thing. But certainly within Moodle, if you're a Moodle admin or if you've got that control in an institution, getting teachers working together, sharing examples of good practice can help bring about change quite quickly. Student self-reporting grades, database tool for assessing in groups, that's all really good. Self-assess, peer assess. Looking at number 4 at the moment, Asian programs. Response to intervention. Okay, so baseline testing students and then using the gradebook, identifying underperformance. That's all. Yeah, there's some great ideas here. Number 7, anonymous monkey. Credible teacher, have skills. Oops, I've clicked onto the wrong slide. Sorry. Skills in charisma control. Yeah, it certainly does. I don't know who's written that one about teacher credibility, whoever anonymous monkey is. But it's interesting to see that there's nothing about subject knowledge there. Micro teaching, big design recorders. Yeah, cool stuff. HP5 video questions. Yeah, awesome, awesome, awesome. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to kind of wrap it up. And looking at the last one here, classroom discussion, report to partner, large groups. Yeah, and of course, you know, you can now have discussion forums in Moodle. You can have your chat rooms in Moodle, and to a certain extent, those can be anonymous as well, or other tools that you can build in if you want anonymous discussion. Yeah. The method enables all to think about it prior to the class and after answering in 2 seconds. And exactly, and it really kind of leverages. How do I get back to my presentation? I'm going to stop my screen sharing. It really doing that Thinkpairshare. It really leverages all the peer effect. It kind of forces everybody to get involved, and because, you know, once you've got that group pressure, then it really kind of gets people going. Okay. So I think that's just about it from me now. So as a good teacher, I'm just going to revisit my learning intentions and success criteria for this session. So hopefully that's given you some stuff to think about. Hopefully you can take some of those strategies and implement them into your Moodle courses. If not, take a copy of the Google Doc and have a look at it and think more, think how it can benefit you. And I think everybody was contributing, which is fantastic.
Okay, thanks very much, Vinny, for that. That was really great. Certainly, alone for the idea of using the chat window as a Thinkpairshare tool, it was worth attending it alone for that idea. Thanks for your time, and I'm sure we've all got an awful lot to go on with and think about and take away from this.
Thank you, Andy. I'm just having a quick look through the last few comments. Trish, amazing. Once the first answer there, that others automatically think any different for us. Yeah. I should have maybe managed that slightly differently. Yeah, most of the slides have just got one answer in them, and there's no wrong answers in them. So it's just all exploring ideas.